This is Valley News Live at 10.
Good evening. I am Nishay Taylor, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, nearly 6,000 residents in Fargo and West Fargo were without power. Majority of those outages have since been restored. Xcel Energy crews say a handful of outages still remain. The estimated restoration time is between 10:45 and midnight for some areas. You can find a link to the outage map on our website at valleynewslive.com. Just click on this story. A major train accident happened this afternoon near Minneapolis. Authorities in Albert Lea say a 50-car train derailed next to Goose Lake. That's about 10 miles north of Minnesota's border with Iowa. No word yet on whether any hazardous materials were on board. Residents that live near the scene of the accident were asked to stay indoors, but no evacuations were ordered. There were no reports of injuries, according to the rail operator. And overnight lane closures will be starting tomorrow in Moorhead and is expected to last until May 23rd. Crews will be completing maintenance work Sunday through Thursday from 8 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. this week. They will start on Highway 10 between Center and Main Avenues. The work will then move to Interstate 94 starting next week. Overnight crews will be doing bridge maintenance along the interstate. Today, Governor Tim Walz kicked off the Minnesota fishing opener by casting a line on Otter Tail Lake. This is a tradition that has been held by Democratic, Republican, and Independent governors since 1948. There's more than 124,000 acres of water in Otter Tail County, and fishing in Minnesota is a billion-dollar industry. A surprise change in CDC guidelines for mask wearing this week has cities, states, and businesses scrambling. NBC's Chris Pallone has a look at how the nation is responding to the new phase in the COVID-19 pandemic.
2 days after new CDC guidance on mask wearing, there's a different vibe in a place which was once the nation's epicenter for COVID-19, New York City.
New York is feeling really like the city we knew and loved.
It's a sign the nation is finally emerging from the coronavirus pandemic after 14 long months.
It is a good step forward.
But reaction to the news fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks anymore has been somewhat mixed.
I'm really confused.
Some cities, states, and businesses have relaxed mask mandates to match CDC recommendations. But masks are still mandatory for everyone at doctors' offices, on public transportation, and in places which decided to keep the mandates. The CDC says children under 12 not yet eligible to be vaccinated should still wear masks, as well as some other groups.
Particularly older people who have underlying illnesses and people who are immunocompromised.
Starbucks is the latest major chain to announce it's dropping its mask requirement for the fully vaccinated, joining Walmart, Costco, and Trader Joe's. But enforcement will be on the honor system.
No one's going to go around holding a piece of paper and saying, "Show me your vaccines."
Health officials say people who aren't vaccinated and don't wear masks are primarily putting themselves at risk. And for the vaccinated,
I've been walking just down the sidewalk with no mask, and it feels great.
A return to normal that at times felt like it would never come. Chris Pallone, NBC News.
34 House Republicans have written a letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi asking her to lift the mask mandate for members of Congress. The CDC announced Thursday that people fully vaccinated against COVID-19 do not need to wear masks or practice social distancing indoors. But it's estimated that only 13 of the representatives who signed the letter have actually been vaccinated for COVID-19. In response to the GOP letter, Speaker Pelosi said the pandemic restrictions will remain in place until more members are fully vaccinated. Here locally, 40 new COVID-19 cases are being reported by the North Dakota Department of Health. No new deaths have not been reported today. So far, 1,504 people in the state have died from the illness since the pandemic began. The positivity rate now sits at 4.67%. And across the river, the Minnesota Department of Health is reporting 882 new COVID-19 cases as of today. 3 more people have also died since Friday. The total death toll in Minnesota now stands at 7,286. Today, hundreds of people packed downtown Fargo for the region's first ever Able Games. Valley News Team's Aaron Walling caught up with volunteers on a warm Saturday afternoon.
On a beautiful Saturday, hundreds of people packed the Broadway Square in downtown Fargo for the inaugural Able Games, with athletes of all walks of life competing with one another. And it's a special moment for the volunteers as well.
I mean, it's fun to see the community come together as a whole, and everything they've been doing to get this to happen, it's been great.
Local celebrities and sports figures were in attendance as well, as everyone got in on the fun.
You know, this ranks way up there at the top. You know, this is something that's special, and like I said, the people at TNT and everybody involved have made this so much more special than I ever could have imagined.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's what Fargo is we kind of get together and put events on like this and really come together as a community.
The Able Games was spearheaded by TNT Gymnastics to bring these athletes in the community closer together.
We have all the people, and that's what we do. Clearly we see the volunteers, the staff, the athletes, the community donors that allow this to happen.
The competitors tackled rowing, jump ropes, and burpees, among other events. Folks were high-fiving and celebrating with one another.
Working their butts off and getting to showcase their abilities is just something that's really close to my heart.
In Fargo, Aaron Walling, Valley News Live.
Now there are plans for hosting more of the Able Games and events in the near future. Meanwhile, the operator of the nation's largest gas pipeline announced today it has returned to normal operations. A ransomware cyber attack forced the shutdown of the Colonial Pipeline last week. The pipeline stretches from Texas to New Jersey and supplies about 45% of gasoline used on the East Coast. The shutdown caused shortages at the pumps and long lines. An Israeli airstrike targeted and destroyed a high-rise building in Gaza City that housed offices of the Associated Press and other media outlets. NBC's Raf Sanchez reports from Beirut.
A surreal and pretty horrifying scene in Gaza City as the Israeli military struck a multi-story building containing the Gaza bureaus of the Associated Press, Al Jazeera, and a number of other international media outlets. Earlier today, the owner of the building got a call from the Israeli military saying, "We are going to strike this property." So these journalists basically had enough time to get out of their offices, go across the street, turn their cameras around, and then film their bureaus being destroyed by an Israeli airstrike. Now, the Israeli military says Hamas was also using this building to house military assets. They have not been very specific about what those assets were, but they insist this was a legitimate military target. As far as we know, no one was injured in that strike. Everyone was able to get out in time. But it is causing outcry around the world. The president of the Associated Press, Gary Pruitt, saying in a statement that he is shocked and horrified by the attack.
We narrowly escaped a huge loss of life. We had 12 journalists in that building. And those brave journalists not only got out, but they were able to salvage much of our equipment because it's important that we continue to tell this story.
Now, this strike, one of only a number that Israel has carried out in the last 24 hours. We now have nearly 40 kids dead in Gaza and nearly 140 people killed in total. On the Israeli side, 9 people are dead, including an Israeli man killed in a rocket attack on the city of Ramat Gan earlier. So for now, the violence continues with no ceasefire in sight. Raf Sanchez, NBC News, Beirut.
China landed a spacecraft on Mars today for the first time in the latest advance for its space program. Touchdown was just after 7 a.m. Beijing time. Plans call for a rover to stay in the lander for a few days of diagnostic tests before rolling down a ramp to explore an icy area of Mars. It will join an American one that arrived on the Red Planet back in February. Later on Valley News Live at 10. The home sharing business Airbnb says they lost more than $1 billion. And summer is in with a first look at the forecast.